Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get to the bottom, the lower bracket, as it were. This is going to be lower qualification A, and I am here to greet you. Hi, this is Cosmonarchy. We are going to be qualifying one more player to Acropolis number 2's main stage, the battlement stage. It's going to either be ArbuzBudesh, rank 3 player right now, was felled by Top Ramen in an upper qualification attempt earlier in the tournament, or it's going to be JarrellStorm at rank 7 in this tournament, and of course a rising star, a Zerg player who has been putting in a lot of practice, a close friend of Top Ramen's. So this could be the Ramen and Friends train in, which would be an upset, or it could be Arbuz doing what we all expect and taking the series. Let's start off by talking about the pick ban. We do indeed have our maps and vetoes on the screen. We will be opening up with Genesis Y after banning Check Stealer. Arbuz picked that map. Then JarrellStorm had banned Demaloon before picking Paradise. The last of our bans were Muspelheim and Rage Slave, so we will not be seeing the easy back base of Muspelheim, and we will not be seeing the fast-paced, aggressive 3-spawn map in Rage Slave. However, Spinaltap was left on the docket, and that map is a rampless map. There is no ramp into the main base or the natural. That does mean that Protoss is able to dictate the tempo a little bit easier. I would expect Arbuz to be able to take it. Savvy pick by him. The follow-up is Blackwater Bastion, so far, JarrellStorm opting for the 4-spawn options, and Near Impact was selected as our decider. As a reminder, there were a few other maps like Decapitation, a 4-spawn map that could have been brought into it. But I think it's interesting we're already seeing some decisions that have been made with the idea of like leaning towards, say, Genesis Y, these more aggressive, fast-paced early game maps. Those were the ones that were selected by Arbuz. Meanwhile, JarrellStorm went to great lengths to ban those kinds of maps. But will Spinaltap being left in the pool come back to bite our Zerg player? I think that's a fair, open question, but we got to go a little bit of a distance before we get there. Genesis Y is our first map. Let's see what these players have in store for us. ArbuzBudesh is in the top right as is this straight up cyan Protoss? Oh, it's eggshell blue, a very classy color. I do like myself some eggshell blue. Meanwhile, JarrellStorm is in the bottom right as the green Zerg. I was tempted to say like 4-screen or something there, but no, just straight up green. 50% color guess accuracy so far. Remember, Cosmonarchy has over 100 player colors. Now, what can we say about ArbuzBudesh? He has struggled a little bit uncharacteristically so far in the series. I didn't cast, but I did witness because I was the admin for the ArbuzBudesh versus Shopkeeper Dog set. And Shopkeeper Dog suffered a loss in that series overall, but it was a 3-game set. Arbuz, having been penalized in that second game, caught off guard by it was a match on Demaloon where eventually we did have our Terran player able to pivot into Gorgons and start really picking apart the heavy flow. It was one of those build orders that opens up with blackjacks and such, but didn't really dedicate too much resources towards the shamans. And as a result, the gas was spent on a fast tier 2. So I know I'm talking about a completely different matchup now because we are in, of course, PvZ, but I think it's worth noting that Arbuz, he hasn't necessarily been grinding enough matches to know, okay, how does my style need to change and shift with how people are responding to the threats that Protoss can put out. And JarrellStorm is a grinder. JarrellStorm has been playing a lot of matches. And of course, being close friends with Mr. Ramen over here, who has just earlier in the tournament defeated ArbuzBudesh 3-0 in a hard-fought but effective series for the Terran player, it makes you think, okay, well, now we're talking about JarrellStorm presumably having a nice little inside there. He can just ask his boy Ramen, like, hey, what do you think about Arbuz's style? Can you try to play like him? Maybe because Ramen does play all the races, although not to the same level as Hit-em-Up, for example, who does actually roll random for this tournament. And so, Jarrell has a little bit of an inside man as far as that's concerned. Now, we are seeing a 2-gate opener for Arbuz. He is going to go for a Legionnaire early. He's going to be moving around looking for that Droleth. Now, you can't stand on borrowed units to reveal them, So that is where Arbuz is basically trying to, he's threading the needle, or JarrellStorm is really doing that, I guess, and Arbuz is searching for that needle that's been tossed into the haystack. You can see him walking all the way around. Very unlikely for him to actually find that spot there. What is Jarrell doing with this extra time? Spreading Kagra towards the ramp in case he needs to put down some circuits, but optimally you would like to put them down after you put down your hatch in the natural, and it looks like, I don't know, based on what I'm seeing here, is he not just going to be going for triple Larvosk as the opener? He is. Okay, so we are going to be seeing a larva-heavy production out of our Zerg player. What this means is that basically we're talking about, 4 larvae, counting the hatch, right, every 14 seconds. Does he have the economy to keep up with that? I feel like this early on in the game, the answer is no. But, there's a little bit of parrying going on. The faster Nexus, as a result of going for the 2-gate into Legionnaire, means that there's not really that much pressure for our Protoss player to sort of push and attempt to bop the Zerg player at any key detail right here and now. And with some Ecclesiasts and Zealots being added to the mix, I think Arbuz is nicely insulated versus the Zeth Flood that seems to be taking shape right now. You can see here Jarrell getting caught off guard perhaps a little bit by the blockers here, the Biotic Bastions that are acting as wall assists. And, well, I say that Arbuz is insulated. I'm not so sure if that's actually true, as Legionnaires are moving across the map. As long as he can hold the Nexus and doesn't get completely caught off guard here, we do actually have an embassy coming on down here. No static defense coming. 1 Zealot being in production. That's all that Arbuz has. His defensive warden will definitely help him out here. The 3 Legionnaires are moving elsewhere. Nothing of critical infrastructure has actually been damaged from Arbuz's side, so JarrellStorm just going to be leaving the area. The defensive warden definitely too much there, and adding a 4th Larvosk, as well as upgrading his pool. Now, these Legionnaires did get stopped. It doesn't look like they actually wound up walking into the enemy base, so now they're going to be a little bit slow to it. Instant auto surround there by JarrellStorm, just a little bit of a luck on the pathfinding side. A second Legionnaire is going to be able to make it in for a deep scout, sees all of this larva, and sees that gas is still being harvested while the pool is also continuing to mutate. That tells you that there's a chance for Nathracors, the flying Zethracore, if you will. And so the Zeths have been recalled, and so another Legionnaire does end up falling. We'll see what ends up coming of that. We see an instant gas saturation here as the Witness is halfway complete, courtesy of that embassy. This one Legionnaire going to continue trying to run around while the Zeths charge forward continuously. And Engram, you can tell that he's taking the threat of Nathracors switches seriously, as well as a Matrix over here. I'm assuming he's going to be adding an Engram to his natural as well. The Matrix will be more immediately useful. However, the Zeths could threaten a flood, especially with that Engram only halfway complete back in the main. If they manage to sidestep this army and get in there, that could be not necessarily lethal, but it could definitely be hairy. Okay, interesting. We're actually going to see some artisans as a follow-up here. So it looks like Arbuz wants to make an investment into some gas harvesting and then try to sort of make that investment back, make the resource investment back by adding the extra resources there, the extra harvesting. Witness going to be very crucial in scouting out what's happening here as Jarrell spikes up in workers. So now matching the Protoss for the time being, but still no third base in sight for either player. Stargate on the way for Arbuz. That's going to be important for the longer the game goes on. Just trying to keep track, making sure he's not walling himself off with his SimCity. And you can see Arbuz is expecting a third base to be coming. He does see some workers leaving the building there, but okay, what are you really doing with all of this, right? It looks like it just maybe a bad rally on Jarrell's part as he continues to flood Zeths. There are going to be some Nathracors coming. Nothing too significant as of right now. One Zeth does get bodied over here in the northwest, but that is going to allow Jarrell to be aware of the move out, and Arbuz actually, changing his mind about where he wants his units to go. Pretty good saturation attempts coming out over here for JarrellStorm on the 2 base, but you can see Arbuz has his eyes set on that. A mass burrow, but I mean, that's not going to be too effective with the Witness being there. So that's kind of interesting. And he sees the Nats leaving the base. So now Arbuz huddling back over in the natural. He has his engram in production, or in place here, I should say. So I really don't think that the Nats are going to be able to do too much. And a second Stargate on the way. First one not actually producing anything as of right now, and it's going to be a land effect. Ooh, 2 shots going in there. That's going to be a pretty easy couple of taps there. And the third base will probably get tackled a little bit. As a Warden comes down, oh, that's a free 150 minerals, unforced error there. But unfortunately for JarrellStorm, he's actually losing a lot more of his units than he might have wanted to. trying to keep those air units for either a tech switch later. You can mutate the Nathacore into the Calcalisk, which is a very powerful damage-dealing unit. Once you hit tier 2, you can try to go for something like that. But as of right now, we are going to see that whole threat completely fall apart. There are a good amount of Zeths, Vorvs, Quasis, and Hydras moving across the map, and that should actually be pretty lethal because a lot of the combat efficiency right now is either locked up in these Stargates or it's locked up in static defense. So Arbuz should actually have the pace of the game dictated to him by his opponent. And as he is adding more Zealots, he should be a little bit more, you know, perhaps insulated versus the raw upfront threat. But we are going to see some Basilisks mutated, and those are adept at sort of whittling down these armies from afar and maybe sort of forcing engagements to either happen or to be abandoned very fast. Now, let's see. I mean, Arbuz is going to fly over here. He is going to see the eggs mutating. He doesn't know what those are yet. He does not have any observer here or any witness here. When you have detection, you can actually see what unit is being made and what the progress bar is if you click on the egg. That's a new feature in Cosmonarchy that will obviously benefit using more witnesses. But we have one coming up just now, and it's a little bit too late to really tell you what's going on here. Now, we are going to see the disruption field come in. It will eventually be brought down, but it did drop the DPS very, very significantly there as more Zealots are engaging. And Engram finishes at the third base. That's going to help deal with the Rilla Rokors spawning as a result of hitting those Zoryus. Zealots and Ecclesiasts still standing tall and trying to give chase right now. You got to watch out. The Gladiuses could just get focused down by the Basilisks, and they do want to hit a snowball count if they can as they continue to heckle this force. JarrellStorm definitely having a bit of a rough time of it right now. He's going to go ahead and try to send a couple of reinforcements in, but it's not very successful. So his gambit at trying to attack and finding a magic timing before the Protoss hits critical mass on their air units was not successful. Meanwhile, we take a look at over the base, we are seeing a pretty good number of static defense set up over there. So any counterattack via air is not really going to be too significant, not really going to be what the Doctor is ordering right now for our Zerg player. But he is adding more Skiths, he is adding more Naths, and doesn't have a lot of Vespene in the tank. His third base is set up, sort of saturated over here, could definitely use a couple extra workers, a pair of extra workers, in fact, on all of his gas, it looks like. Yeah, he's actually undersaturated on all of his gas right now. So I know that the third worker doesn't add that much, but at this stage in the game, you definitely want to bother doing that. Workers actually stretching ahead for the Protoss player as he thinks about setting up a fourth base. Indeed, there's the Nexus in the top left. So I will say, you got to give Arbuz this, right? He's adding a Crucible. He's going to speed up production of all of his gates. He's probably going to add more gates down here as well. That's probably what the pylon is for there. Crucible does provide power as well. So there is that. But yeah, I will say, with good witness position on the army right now, seeing what's going on, and good tempo on controlling, getting his own fourth base up and running, forcing the Zerg into an uncomfortable decision, adding an Argosy. Okay, that's interesting. So Arbuz going to be going for heavier air to complement his existing sort of frigate fleet, as well as the dwindling ground army. It's not scaled up the way that you would want necessarily off of 3 bases. You probably do want to think about maybe going for extra Zealots, extra Ecclesiasts, that sort of thing. Really just needs something on the ground to distract the Zerg army, which is growing quite large as well. Keep in mind that these counts in the top right are workers over military, and so you can tell that JarrellStorm has a lot of military units. He does have his stack of Nathacores and Skiths. There is no splash damage with this army for Arbuz. He's just relying on the bounces that get channeled by the Gladiuses still being intact. But you can just tell his army is not nearly as sizable as the Zerg. Might be powerful, but it's not nearly as sizable. So we could see a total wipe right now. We do have to watch out as the Skithacores try to engage and spread their splash damage onto the Ecclesiasts and onto the air units. More and more air units funneling on through. That's going to be absorbing a lot of the damage from JarrellStorm's opponent here, as the Gladiuses are the last units standing, really. The ground army completely wiped out, forcing a bit of a disengage. Remember, the Basilisks are still standing tall. There was no opportunity for the front line of ArbuzBudesh to really engage onto the back there. So we are definitely going to see another army fight before this end of this game. And what is it going to be fueled with? The Argosy not actually making anything right now. Oh, look at that. The Gladiuses have decided to go in and for a dive. They are going to be clearing out the workers. The Witness here providing vision so you can't just burrow to avoid the pain. And now the Larvosks look like they are going to be taken out as well. 125 gas for each one of those. That's not, it's not nothing, right? It's a pretty penny. Spreading the damage there. You can see the Zerg disengaging so that that debuff expires. Another worker round is going to be hit here, but here come the Nats as well. They have been hatched. A couple of them are going to be going down right immediately. The worker count has fallen dramatically. I think with it, the odds of a JarrellStorm victory here are significantly dwindling. However, the Nathicors are going to come in and engage. The Gladiuses have started to take a beating here. Arbuz may be overstaying his welcome. Because remember, the Zerg has a pretty sizable army lead on the Protoss, and so, yeah, I guess he still has to punch through the static defense, but he could, you know, you'd think that that wouldn't be the end of the world here. You can see Arbuz saying, oh yeah, I have all these workers. I should probably use them. Some workers being made, but more Nathicors being made right now for our Zerg player as he attempts to recover from that economic deficit. Looks like there was a hash. I think this was a witness hash, I believe. Because Luciferius was the admin of this game, so all good there. Yeah, that's a witness hash. So the game continues. No worries there. Ancestral Archives coming down for Arbuz. So, okay, he's actually really spiking up in attack. I still feel like, I mean, you can see he's got almost 3k minerals, so there's a reason for him to do so. But I do still feel like this is a dicey situation for him to be leaning on tech when he might just be able to win through pure military production. The Witness is still here to supply the vision, and so that is looking like a very, very debilitating match here and turnaround here for JarrellStorm's army. He was trying to see if he could keep the hold going, but the Gladius count has just ballooned up to an absurd degree. And now we're talking about the Zealots engaging onto the Hydras. This is not looking good for our Zerg player. I think he's pretty much out. JarrellStorm will call GG, and that will be our game number 1, going the way of the favorite. ArbuzBudesh has gotten himself on the board, which is better than he had done in the previous set. And I mean, JarrellStorm has got to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit there. It was his opponent's map pick. So when we're thinking about it from that perspective, he obviously has something up his sleeve. He's been thinking about things. He's got Paradise selected, a 4-spawn map. Let's see what the Doctor ordered for our Zerg player. Let's see what's in the cards in map number 2. We are back in action, ladies and gentlemen. We've got ArbuzBudesh as the yellow Protoss in the bottom right of Paradise, a map ported, originally Dante's Peak ported by BiddyB. JarrellStorm in the bottom left as the Midnight Green Zerg. That's right. So, yeah, by the way, the last map, Genesis Y, also by BiddyB. So we have a BiddyB Spectacular, moving people from BiddyB map A to BiddyB map B. The Pickup Partner Classic move, sponsored all of Cosmonarchy for a good while now, actually. We've kind of organized this whole idea into the, you know, now you've got, I'm looking around for where the sponsor billboard is. There it is. The Pickup Partner, brought to you by. Now we are going to see JarrellStorm go for his patented Larvosk opener. This is the same opener that he did before. I would be very surprised if ArbuzBudesh goes for anything else than his 2-gate, and I will be surprised because we are going to see a lattice opener here. It's very clear based on the fact that the gas has been harvested. So there it is, a lattice opener for our Protoss player. Now, if JarrellStorm relies on pool units, once again, the lattice can be very effective. Now, hit 'em up style has been to use Simulacrum early on because you can't rely on getting the resources necessary for idols. And when you get one idol, that's actually a lot worse than one Simulacrum super early because the low DPS, the micro ability, etc., allows, like, if they Zeth Rush you, for example, and you have a Sim, then you can actually use the Sim with micro, with battle workers to split the Sim into many other copies of itself. And then actually you have a you have a situation where you might be able to move across the map and just A-move them at that point. But odds are you'll at least have that. Now, Arbuz has been on the record before as being someone who really doesn't like the Simulacrum. And so I think that's, you know, okay, well, maybe he won't end up making it then. But he also has talked with Hit 'em Up about certain openers, specifically the lattice opener versus Zerg. I do believe there has been that discussion. He is going to be going for the idol stack relatively early on. Maybe on a 4-spot map, you don't really expect the 6 pool, right? So you think to yourself, okay, well, I can be fairly certain then that everything's going to be okay, and I can actually wait for the idols to come out. Now, when you do have more idols, like in these bigger army fights and stuff, Sims are obviously less useful. But yeah, as we get into this map, we might see how that performs overall. I do think JarrellStorm is going to take one look at this opener and say, oh my god, triple lattice, yeah. I think he's going to take one look at this opener and think, okay, I'm going to need the Hydra Sten very quickly. Or maybe he'll go Zorkas. That is another good option. I feel like anything other than pool is a good option. when you're going up against like mass idle. We did see one vassal be made that is going to link up with a battle worker scribe. I say battle worker because even though he's a scout, he should probably be doing battle as soon as those Zets come in, but no, it doesn't look like it. He's going to be more curious as the Zets fan out for a bit of a scout here. Wow, there's a bit of a worker convention going on right now. Yeah, bully him. Get him. And once again, going up to a very fast 4 larva time. There's not really going to be option for expanding there. The third lattice was maybe scouted there. I'm not sure if JarrellStorm clicked on it, but yeah, you can see here the worker actually going to be revealed, it looks like, by that scribe. No, instead the Zets chase it off. Okay, so, you know, the vessel will mostly just be there to heckle the expansion attempts, the attempts at actually putting down a hatch. Jarrell going for, I would say, I would argue it's a little bit of a greedy build, but if he decides to go for that hatch, yeah, he is going to go for that hatch. He is going to be making his quasis. So when you force quasis out early instead of Zets as Protoss, it does feel to me like you can move across the map with a good stack of idols and really heckle these units, because the quasis, this was on hold position, so it just kind of froze up because it was being attacked and it wanted to move to it to respond to the attack. It's a silly thing. Maybe we can fix that at some point later. You know what? If DF, if you're watching this, homeboy DF, he knows all about the odds and ends of like silly bugs like that, or at least would know the first part about where to maybe think about pushing it back. You know, these are things that you might be able to do. Also, Bitty B tile. So no expansion yet for Arbuz. It looks like he's thinking about it based on his mineral count, and he doesn't have the Vespene count to actually make additional idols for much longer. But yeah, don't be, I would say be wary if you're in this position, because obviously it looks like the Zerg has more units, and they do, but the Protoss army is just, the Sims are tanky, and the idols just deal that splash, right? So you really aren't going to be able to do too much to actually bring them down right here, right now. But we do see the Hydra's Den, the Zorka Shroud, and the Quasi Pool upgrading into the Vornath Pond. Like, there are so many things happening over here as the minerals immediately get saturated by JarrellStorm that it looks like he's kind of going for that more greedy option. Warden in the mineral line of the main base for ArbuzBudesh is going to insulate him versus any small run-bys, flybys with air units. That is for sure. Nexus already about a quarter of the way done for the natural, but JarrellStorm spiking up in workers and not really being pressured right now versus an army. Arbuz does have the army that he can use to pressure. If he moves across the map, he does have to worry about a potential, you know, incoming attack from the pool unit. So that's one thing to think about for sure. And maybe you would want to lead with some of your army and then leave a couple of units back behind just to defend, or something to that effect. Maybe just set up a pseudo wall with stuff. But we've got Lake is out now, and I feel like that's going to be a lot more annoying for Arbuz to actually break. We even have, it looks like setting up for a Lake is based drop with a number of Ovoleths. Yep, that's exactly what's happening right now. So that's curious. Okay, I thought maybe there was a third Ovoleth somewhere, but it doesn't look like it. The Vassal, second one, does arrive here, and it's actually going to narrowly miss the Ovoleths. It has such poor vision range, so I'm almost guaranteeing that the drop has not been sighted. Now, at this point, we are going to see the Zerg battle, and then thusly have to retreat. You can see how fast the units actually do heckle things there. You know what? I want to say that that bug that we just saw there with the units pathing there, that was a Bitty B tile bug, but it might not have been. Now, we have some idols about to pop out here, but how fast does Arbuz respond to this? It's not going to take very long for two Lakers to do a lot of damage, and you can see it right there, right now, 4 workers hitting the dustbin. Gonna have to correct his rally. Looks like he does already. And now, meanwhile, he is diving in, forcing a lot of Zerg units, shutting down mining at the natural base. So kind of an even trade right now. And remember, the Zerg army is not rated to deal with the idols. There is, of course, the one Lake is, and there's not really much way to reveal that right now. Arbuz actually, and Jarrell, both freezing in terms of their macro, not actually training any units or anything. JarrellStorm going to correct that with a single Lake is being made. But it's not really going to be too effective at clearing this out with just the pure quads. He's trying to box them in, courtesy of the Lakers. And as more and more Zerg units, advanced Zerg units like the Hydralisk come out, I do think Arbuz is going to need to fall back, but he can still stand around and bruise this army, as you can see him trying to do here. He's actually got 5 idols that were idle during that time. Haha. Try to figure out which word I meant there if you're not a native English speaker. But you can see he's still heckling. He's really putting the hurt, turning the screws. Not really that much that can be done there. However, the harvesting has already begun once again for the Zerg player. JarrellStorm definitely in a favored position here, as the embassy only now being made, a couple gateways being added to the natural base. He can only really harvest from the ridge as he tries to see how just where are those Lakers. Well, now he's going to see if he can reveal it. And, you know, I guess I like the idea, but it doesn't actually look like... It doesn't quite look like it's going to be enough to bring them down. Looks like one of the Ovoleths might end up dying to this stutter step here, and yep, that is going to be the case. Lake is also falling at the same time. There is one Warden here, but at the same time as that is attempting to be gone, JarrellStorm just forcing his way past the idols and going straight for the back base. It looks like that Ovoleth narrowly survived, and now the force has to be scrambled. Okay, that Lake is dead. The idol's also being attacked at the same time. Has Arbuz reset his economy during this time, or does he have a bunch of idle workers back at home? I feel like the answer is he does. Yeah, he has not reset his economy in the natural. Fighting up through the ramp using the cliff advantage, definitely going to be advantageous for Arbuz in that spot, but this is neck and neck right now as far as the army fights. But again, I have to stress how long Arbuz was without mining on one of his bases, while meanwhile JarrellStorm just kind of reset his Droll-F count a little bit there. He never really fully saturated his minerals, and there is that for sure, but he was mining for a good while longer than his opponent. Now, Arbuz has a nominal economic advantage. However, his bank, his overall tech availability, definitely less significant. He has crushed the Lakes drop that did a lot more damage than you might have expected. And again, that's partially due to the architecture of the map. Are you really going to spot the Ovoleths coming in there? I mean, the Vassal had the opportunity to, and if he does that, I feel like he's in a very, very strong position. But now, I mean, his forces are all the way towards 12 o'clock. Meanwhile, Arbuz is going to be desperately trying to deal with this force. He has no Dracodons. His Witness is only a quarter of the way done. He is not going to have much of a defense versus the Lakes that are setting up shop outside his main base. This looks like a JarrellStorm victory in the making, evening things up. I really don't see how Arbuz is going to be able to do things. He wants to stall for his reinforcements to come in, but his reinforcements are not that significant right this moment. It feels very difficult for him to really do too much of anything now, and the Zephyr Core is coming in to help bring down the gateways alongside those Hydralisks. That's going to be enough to give JarrellStorm the victory. So we are tied up 1-1, and we will be going to Spinaltap. I talked and ranted and raved about how Spinaltap seems to me like a map where Protoss can do some of their best work. So will we see Arbuz live up to the hype? Will we see him take series point in the next map? Well, we're about to find out. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with Game 3. JarrellStorm in the bottom left as our Teal Zerg, and ArbuzBudesh in the top right as our, Ultramarine Protoss? Zafir. I was pretty sure it wasn't Ultramarine, but you gotta guess what you can think of, and nobody thinks of Zafir. How do you pronounce Zafir again? We do have Spinaltap here, a map ported by myself. It is a port of Vertebra. Can't remember the original author's name, but I know that Mr. Three Crow bountied this particular map, and so far it has led to some very interesting games. Now, this is I would say this is a slightly controversial map because of the fact that right here, you do not see any ramps into the base area, right? So you've got a choke that's, got the wall assist, courtesy of these minerals, but Protoss usually dictates the pace with gateway-focused openers. We will see Arbuz going for that gateway-focused opener once again as his gas count only started to rise now as he banks enough resources for perhaps Ecclesiasts in the early stages of the game, but Dracodons really have a field day with the pool-oriented units early on. JarrellStorm going to go ahead and put down his pool before his K-Grid this time around. In fact, maybe that's actually how he was doing it before. I feel like that's pretty much the same way. Either way, though, this might point to a little bit of a faster military timing. You can see him conserving some of his larvae. In fact, he's actually trying to mutate the egg. I wonder if this is like a mind game here. We'll see if he decides to cancel that Droll-F. He selected it. I feel like he's thinking about it. He wants to wait so that he is going to cancel the larva. Okay, so he's planning something here. He wants to go straight for 3 pairs of Zephyr Cores. The first gateway not actually complete. This is definitely a faster military timing. So if you don't want to play this game on this map, if you want to just say, hey, I'm not going to bother trying to, get into the normal situation between ZVP in the early stages of the game. No, instead, I'm going to be going for something a little bit more aggressive. This could be a way to make that happen, right? So we do have the 3 pairs of Zeths now leaving the building. We have workers behind it, so this isn't necessarily going to be the finishing blow. First Ecclesiast will be out, and Grand Library coming out as well. So, okay, we are going to need to see some quick thinking from Arbuz here. He's not actually making units right now. A Zealot has now been made. His gas count a little bit too low for him to afford an Ecclesiast at the back here. He needs to respond to the Zeths immediately. He's not paying attention. Might end up getting surrounded here a little bit. Does end up falling back. Remember, the Ecclesiast, when it fires, will be able to defend itself and get some shields. It's going to be very effective at getting those battle workers in tow here. So there we go. Right back to mining. Doesn't lose the Ecclesiast after all. I think he's out of the woods when it comes to the threat. Remember, JarrellStorm was not making military units behind this. He's only got that. So, that's an interesting opening here. A couple Zealots now out. You know, the scout is going to be able to be completed, I would think, for Jarrell here, but he actually doesn't know that that Grand Library is in production right now. I don't think the Zeth vision range actually provided him with any warning. Maybe he saw, like, the orb or whatever. I don't know that he clicked on it, though. So I'm guessing he doesn't actually have a particular plan there. Still one base from JarrellStorm. What you'd love to do here, and from Arbuz's perspective, is gun for, like, a single Legionnaire so you can actually move it out there and go for your... you know, scout, so you can see what your opponent is doing behind this. As of right now, it's kind of a little bit hard for him to figure that out. Going for the Herald with the Vornath Pond halfway complete, are we going to see a bunch of gas being banked here? Looks like Jarrell cancels whatever he was thinking about making there and goes for an expansion after all. So, you know, once again, not going to see too much in the docket there for Jarrell. He's not going for... it's kind of a confused build right now. Warden coming on down. Zeth just scouting around, seeing that there's a Grand Library indeed. 4 pairs of Nats. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Is he going to be banking the gas for the Nathracores? He's also making the expansion at the same time. So we know that this is not going to be... like, he doesn't have a lot of units, right? He actually, by definition, has 1 Zethracore right now. And Arbuz is allowing it to live. He could just kill it. He's he's allowing it to live for now. Now, the Warden is going to finish. We are going to have 8 Nats. 2 more pairs just started. So... whether or not Arbuz, you know, keeps the units necessary around, he's actually thinking about expanding off the back of this. He really is blind right now. He has no idea what his opponent is doing. Now, 8 Nats are going to be coming in from the northern flank. We did have some Quasilisks being made for anti-ground, you know, some sort of defense force there. With 1 Warden being made here, and Zealots only in production, as well as a Herald, which cannot shoot up. This is a little bit of a blind spot here. It does feel like JarrellStorm might be able to just come in here, pick the pylon, and then have free reign on the base. And Arbuz is either going to have to try to base trade or attack back. So you can see here, yep, there it is. The Warden is going to pick off 1 of the Nathracores before the pylon ends up being brought down, yet not actually able to do anything else. The lack of redundancy, pylon not going to make it happen. You can see the Nexus only a quarter of the way complete here, but as he arrives, remember, this force is very, very deadly. JarrellStorm is going to be in a rough spot. Now, no pylon was made. The Nathracor is actually pulling away and pulling back. Remember, only the Ecclesiasts here for anti-air, as one of the Larvosks is going to be focused down immediately. Not a bad shout there, as now Arbuz might be overcommitting. The Herald being focused down, but that is just going to speed up the attack rate of the rest of the units when it dies. You can see here the Ecclesiasts are being taken out, and those are being focused down by the Quasilisks. Only 1 Ecclesiast left, and that should be taken out by the Nathracors that are incoming. So we are going to see 6 Nathracors still alive. Some of the Protoss units not actually engaging with this army. We've got 7 more Nats on the way as double pylon gets reset. Feels like this is a very sloppy situation here for both players, but it looks like now JarrellStorm's economy is endangered. He's lost all of his larva production from the Larvosk, so he only has the 2 hatches now. So his military production is definitely going to be reduced. And now, with the Herald dying, that's going to increase the DPS of these Zealots. That red overlay there helping him out. Could end up going after that low HP egg, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. The Zealots just going to be claimed by the Nats and the Zeths. And what can Arbuz do in response? He's coming up with an engram and a matrix, really dedicating a lot of his forces to that static defense. The worker count, a measly 9 for JarrellStorm. He's starting to see if he can get back to that, replenishing one of his Kagrins into a Larvosk. This scribe was moved out from making the Nexus to the top left. It's going to go in for a rescout. I do love that idea. Now, I do feel like right now, you can see, going heavy into Ecclesiast production, has the 1 Herald for the anti-ground. Now the Nexus is going to be endangered. It's not necessarily the end of the world if Arbuz ends up losing this Nexus here, and it looks like he will. He just needs to buy time for the engram, so... no, he's actually going to call it right here and now. Didn't want to wait. I feel like the engram could have actually helped him out quite a bit there, since it would have splashed into the Zets and the Nats. Somehow, I think maybe Arbuz expected that Jarrell had more workers than he really did, maybe, or something like that, more of an economic lead. I really feel like this game was closer than it seemed. But despite that, that means JarrellStorm has moved in a surprise win on a map that I really don't think favors the Zerg player or the Terran player in the Protoss versus matchup. So that is a very interesting result. We will be going into game number 4. Maybe Jarrell can end it here, or maybe Arbuz will bring it back to a decider. Let's find out. We are back with what might be the last map of the whole series, or could be just the start of this change in Arbuz's fate. He's now facing elimination from Gauntlet Stage A. We have ArbuzBudesh on the top right. What color is this? Is this finally Arrowlight Yellow? No, it's Beaster Brown. God damn it. JarrellStorm in the top left. I'm going to say this Zerg player on Blackwater Bastion is none other than... Mahogany, Wine, Auburn. Which one do I want to... I'll say Mahogany. Oh, it was Cordovan. I was totally wrong. Well, that's the last color in that family of colors that was added around the same time, courtesy of Darkened Fantasies. Every time I guess the color and I get it wrong or right, I always have to think and thank Darkened Fantasies because, goddamn, that guy has added so much to the project over the years. He's responsible for the player-colored warp matrix there, the warp anchor. When you gestate a structure and you've got player color on the little overlay there, the little pulsating mass, that's also him. You think about the player-colored Terran construction graphics as well that we won't see in this series, of course. That's him, too. I mean, just fantastic. Just what a guy. And responsible for so many other things. Selection extender. Obviously, think about the fact that we've got more CCMU, right? Like the CCMU being pushed out further, the extra entity limits or such. That's also him. So big thanks to Darkened Fantasies. And while I'm thanking him, I might as well thank everybody else, right? Obviously, Veek7, big homie right there, big Chromie. Definitely responsible for big cawing it up with the code. Responsible for so many epic changes. One thing that's very that goes under the radar a lot is I watch StarCraft 1 streamers and I see them struggle to place structures because they're always off center of the mouse. Veek fixed that. I know that's like a very weird and small thing compared to a lot of other details that have been added. Oh yeah, DF is also responsible for the production tab. How could I forget that? But you know, camera positions on the map and save to the replay data as well. That's Veek. You know, there's so many things that is epic from everybody involved, and I really do appreciate it. So just wanted to throw that out there, guys. Just wanted to say thanks to everybody who helped make Cosmonarchy possible. We will, I think Cosmonarchy is already great, but we will make Cosmonarchy greater. That's for sure. Just give us some time. And give Arbuz some time, because he's cooking. 2-gate into expansion with only one military unit, that being a Legionnaire. This is a build he's fallen back to for his expansion attempts. And I know that Hit 'em Up specifically has called that into question as to whether or not that would be too useful. Now, JarrellStorm, on the other hand, going for Larvosk, Pool, Larvosk, and it looks like he might be going for a third one as well. This Legionnaire going to peel 2 of those Zets off. That's definitely going to reduce the overall DPS potential of the Zethar cores that JarrellStorm wants to go for. You can see, Jarrell's actually going to end up losing that Zethar core if Arbuz cares to take the fight, but it doesn't look like he wanted to micro it out too well there. Definitely something that you can do. No, he's actually targeted the wrong one there, so he will end up falling. Despite that, though, the Warden is halfway complete, the Ecclesiasts are already out, and of course the Zethar cores didn't actually know where his opponent was, so they're going to be able to pick off one out of the 2 Zets that went to that location, and now JarrellStorm at least knows where his opponent is, but that kind of build opener where you have those 8 Zets super fast, I feel like it's a lot more useful on a 2-spawn map. So it's funny that Jarrell wanted to do that, even though he picked the 4-spawn maps. By the way, that last map going the way of Jarrell does signify that he has stolen his opponent's map pick away. Definitely something where Arbuz was not necessarily expecting it, wanted to go for that Herald. Now, the Nexus did end up getting canceled after the scout of all of the Zets. That already some economic damage coming Arbuz's way. As he's floating a decent amount of money, he's going to go ahead and drop that Nexus a second time. He is still ahead of the tempo for Jarrell, although it's worth noting that Hatcherosks do take less time to make than the competitor Nexus, right, and Ministry for Terran. So definitely something that you want to keep in mind. So we'll have to see what Arbuz wants to do here as he puts down his pylon pretty far from the Nexus. Jarrell been using a lot, I mean, of air-based plays in all of these games. Trying to go after the pylon. I'm not sure that was necessary, but he loses 3 Zets for it. I mean, technically cost efficient. Very silly, very silly. We do have the Larvosk completing over here. We were talking about 4 Larvosk production, as well as, of course, the hatch, and another one coming up here. So we are talking about 6 larvae every 14 seconds. Once that hatch and the natural finishes, he will be able to pool up a good number of workers. We have a Stargate coming. I do believe that Arbuz is just going to blindly move into a single land effect, and this is probably going to be the future of this particular matchup, because when you're fighting against Zerg, and you know that they can go for the air, you want some kind of fast-paced, nimble scout that will also be able to deal with the air units if need be. And the Witness does come online faster than the Stargate into land effect, of course, because of its cost efficiency, but it does not provide any combat benefit besides the fact that you can see, burrowed units or whatever. Now, a huge Zeth flood coming out here from JarrellStorm, which was not actually respected by Arbuz. He might end up losing a lot of his units over here. Remember that when he loses an Ecclesiast, he can actually fight back. Tries to ball up. I don't know that that's the right move. Versus the Zethar cores, you want to constantly be kiting backwards and trying your best to stay alive. And you can see the margin is getting very, very thin here on the ground, but JarrellStorm will not be able to overwhelm at the end of the day. Still doing a crazy amount of cost efficiency there versus all of those Protoss units. Remember that each pair of Zets is 25 minerals, half the cost of what they would cost in StarCraft 1. And so really you're gatekeeping the Zerg vis-a-vis the Larvosk production, the larva production, but you can see that Jarrell has invested quite a bit in that, and he is gunning for it. 7 pairs of Nathicores also being produced, and only 1 Gladius going to be standing between them and total air dominance. A Warden coming up on both bases. Obviously, the Ecclesiast count very, very heavily reduced, and, you know, your natural result to a response to being attacked by the sheer number of Zethicores is to start investing into Zealots so that you can stay alive for a little bit longer, and it makes total sense. It's even the right move here, but with the Nathicores flying across the map, we've already got 8 of them on the way before the Warden is even done. Now, just totally surrounding that Warden and killing it before the Nats even fly in. No cancel called. The Scribes trying to do battle and use the Ecclesiast buff to stay alive a little bit longer. That's going to work out okay for them, but now the Nats are here. Well, that's also going to be something that gets dove on by the Ecclesiasts. Remember that 1 Gladius is out. Is it going to be enough to stay alive? You can see the anti-air piddling away. Okay, a bunch of workers have been slain. JarrellStorm ahead in worker count now. With the Nathicores coming up to each other. Looks like maybe they nibbled on each other to get that ping. And the second Stargate is out. We are going to see a land effect being made. That's exactly what we needed to see out of Arbuz. I would have preferred the land effect early. I know that maybe you'd argue it doesn't have that much utility versus a ground game, but you can at least go for a disruption field or something versus quasis, or, you know, if it's just pure Zeth, you might have a harder time, but maybe you can disrupt them as they're attacking your mineral line or something. I understand the idea that you want something that's going to help you versus the number of Zeths, but right now you need a lot of land effects, my man, because you do not have an engram coming. Matrix about halfway complete. When these Nathicores are going to be getting ready to dive in. There's 26 of the bad boys. This is a very heavy committal, as the Zorkish Shroud also being made behind this. So no instance where JarrellStorm is going to be going to tier 2 in this game. He's taken the third base. He will eventually have more Vespine to his name, but now diving into the main base with these 26, he's going to see the 1 land effect. Does he go after it? An instantaneous disruption field. Great move from Arbuz to lock up the Nathicores as they try their best to see what they can do. Oh, instantaneous snipe on that other land effect, though. Wasn't quick enough on the draw. You can see the utility of the land effect if they're all going to clump up there. That was you'd much rather lose 1 land effect than lose, you know, every worker that you have, as well as that 1 Warden. So definitely something you're going to take and enjoy. It's one of the things I was talking about. He needs to pool up that sheer number of land effects so he can establish that air dominance as he tries to reclaim the worker count. Definitely going to be a far cry from that of his opponent. JarrellStorm really powering up on the economy side. I wonder, I'm going back in my head over like how this map really started, and oh, well, hold that thought. 35 Nathicores now pooling up together, gonna go after that Warden. Where's the response? The land effect's not responding. Arbuz, where are you at? My man, losing all sorts of things as his pylons are soon going to be jeopardized. Instead, his worker count just plummeting here. This feels like it pushes Arbuz into an all-in position. How can he possibly deal with this threat? He does not have a third Nexus. He will not be able to produce workers nearly as fast as his opponent, and he's only got 13 workers anyway. He puts down another Warden and looks to be slowly producing workers, but everything else, that's actually an engram, not a Warden. It's going to be a while before JarrellStorm's on the other side of the map. At this point, I think Jarrell recognizes he is heavily in the lead, decidedly in the driver's seat of this game. He doesn't necessarily need to be attacking. He can just wait for Arbuz to make a mistake by charging forward with his force. And you can see here, the land effects making short work of many of those Nathicores back down to the, I want to say, original count of 26. And, you know, chasing him down there a little bit, being somewhat effective. A couple of pseudo-moving shots here on the tail end of things as Jarrell gets forced backwards. Now, again, the Nathicores are feeling like maybe a bit of a wasted investment when it comes to the head-on fight. But the ground game looks very good. There's only 1 Gladius right now. There's really not that much, I think, that JarrellStorm has to worry about here, as is, again, the land effects just shred the air army, but look at the sheer number of the ground units here, and no disruption field active. You can see him starting to kick in now. Remember, the Ecclesiasts are definitely doing their part. Land effects are being brought down, but remember, there's still some of the air units as well. The 1 Gladius trying its best to channel these bounces. Eventually, it will be brought down by those Quasilisks, and that will be game called. JarrellStorm qualifying into Acropolis #2 Battlement stage, courtesy of a total collapse on the behalf of Arbuz's defenses there. Not working out for him. Obviously a tough game, right? Like, you think back to that decision, he had to cancel the Nexus when he got attacked in by those Zeths, and I'm not sure that he actually needed to. He felt the need to. I wonder if he could have held that. If he decided, instead of going for that Nexus, to wait until the scout comes in and then he sees what his opponent is doing, it makes sense, I think, if he's going to go Nexus with the idea that, okay, I'm going to go Nexus, and then if my opponent is doing a macro build, I'm going to be slightly ahead because he's not going to try to bum rush me. But when you see the bum rush happening, that's definitely going to put you in an awkward position here, because you've delayed activity on your gateways to afford the Nexus. So you don't have that many military units. Then canceling the Nexus feels like now you have nothing. You have no economy coming in. You have no opportunity to supersede your opponent, economically speaking. And also you are, sure, you're going to hold, but you were already going to hold. The question is, can you hold without losing the Nexus, really? And losing that out immediately, that feels like it put Arbuz into a very difficult position versus someone who, yeah, I feel like you could have cold read the idea based on this series that you were going to be seeing some interesting things happen with air units. Definitely feels to me like something that he goes to Stargate. I love the idea of the land effect fast, but he goes to Gladius instead. And I feel like that, plus the move out when it wasn't necessarily advised, where he didn't really have a scout on the Zeph count and he lost so many Ecclesiasts, I think that really enabled things. So it was like a series of three key moments in the game that I think led to Arbuz's eventual being overwhelmed. That and, maybe you can point to the fact that he didn't bother warping in like an engram at either base. Even if he had, though, 26 Nathricors, that would have overwhelmed an engram with a good set of macro, with a good split. Really, really nice usage of the land effects, and it did give him air superiority. The problem is he just didn't have as much of a ground game as he wanted. No Grand Library for extra heralds or something like that. Certainly not enough Zealots and Ecclesias to make the rest of it work. No splash damage versus the ground. No Gladius stack to act as pseudo splash with all of the bounces. That is going to be a JarrellStorm advancing. Very, very good showing for our Zerg player. He's in his element. He's been rising up and grinding. It's taken him quite a bit of time. And you can see these games were sometimes quite close. That last one maybe a little bit more on the one-sided spectrum. I still feel like that Spinaltap game Arbuz could have fought back in. I don't think he realized he was still ahead economically speaking. Sure, the Zerg player is mining from multiple bases and can go for that extra gas. But if their whole army ends up getting held at an arm's length and you're able to beat things back, I do feel like that's a winnable game. But Arbuz did not wanting to see it through. I do regret to inform you that Arbuz will not be joining us for Gauntlet Stage B. Thus ends his career, his political campaign to jump into Acropolis number 2. He will be stuffed at this hurdle, and he will not be participating in the second Gauntlet, which has already started as of the time of recording. So join us for that, but we still have one more player who needs to make it out. Will it be Ayud64 or Mystery Me? Join us for the next video to find out.